They have this whole thing that I learned where it's like, if you just starve the wolf in your life that wants to eat, then it'll grow hungry and it'll just like fade away. And it's like, that's my lust. Okay, I'll just starve it and it'll go away.
The wolf,
stop
so
feeding
the wolf
it. You know,
leaves.
yeah, exactly. And you're like, okay, so what am I left with? This Christianity of boring Bible reading and that's it?
I didn't understand that it actually disempowers sin. You no longer need to go to that thing as a medication anymore, because now you're no longer having to medicate, because now you're connected to your heart and getting that need met at the core.
I'm okay not being okay.
Yeah.
I'm learning to love myself in the not okay. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of men that they hate themselves in the not okay so that they can grab control, because they believe a healthy man has control over everything in their lives.
So we're like, great, I'm going to shame it out of me.
Yes.
I'm going to shame myself to get the proper result, because then I can be lovable.
Yep.
Then I can get my needs met. Then I can be worthy of God. And it's actually like, no, the cross already did that.
It's like, whoa, wait, you can't do that. I learned that was so taboo. You know, as a Christian, you go, yeah, love everybody. But then we hate ourselves in our worst. And then we think Jesus is doing the same thing.
I feel like it is way too prevalent out there to just have accountability, to have a guy that you confess to every single time you do it, or to have something that you install on your
not enough.
computer. It's like, you don't want just the Band-Aid, you guys. It's not going to work.
And that was something that tore me apart. I'm like, I must be terrible that I've seen these crazy miracles that God has done, and I'm questioning my entire relationship with him. And I learned that that's actually the voice of shame and accusation. Like, if God's not scared of my questions, if God's not scared of my wondering, if God's not scared of my lack of conviction and faith, why would I be scared of that same thing over me? Sweet. Let's talk about men. I love talking about men.
I love my man.
Oh, well, mine sounded weird intentionally, but then you made it super sweet. So thanks for doing that. Yeah, I know. We kind of were talking about tossing around the idea of talking about healthy masculinity. It is very interesting too. I think when we look at this day and age, so much of like a conversation that's been talked about is toxic masculinity. Yeah. You know, there's like the Me Too movement that came out. Women, like there's a big pendulum swing of like women that felt so unheard or like unseen in trauma or like traumatic events that happened to them where they felt unprotected or abused. And they, you know, this movement came out where like it was really talked about on news outlets and everything about women that were put in these like terrible situations and experienced, you know, having their autonomy taken away. I'm trying to avoid all the language that YouTube and Apple's not going to like, because I want to make sure that people actually can hear this and watch it. But I think there's just been so much talk about like, what is a man? Like, what's a healthy man? I think I haven't, you know, for so much of my life, I hadn't known what that is. I think it's hard for men that don't have a model of healthy masculinity, and like our fathers, not to demonize them or make monsters out of them, but they are also probably feeling so much deficit in that area. How can they bestow that to their sons? And so I wanted to have this conversation, one for men. You know, I know we do have some men that listen to the podcast. Like, what are things that can help you step into healthy masculinity, your identity as a man? And then for women, how do you spot a healthy man? If you're, you know, wanting to find that in a dating relationship, a future marriage, and then also how can you call that out of a man or believe in that in a husband? Yeah,
one thing a lot of people who have done any level of life with us observe about us is how powerful both of us are. And it's my favorite thing about you since I met you was how secure and healthy you are in your masculinity. Like, I remember men all of the time being intimidated by me, telling me to my face they felt intimidated by me, telling me that they didn't know how to show up with me. They felt insecure around me. Like, there were all these triggers that would come up in men that I was either friends with or like considering dating. And I remember dating a guy that I was really into, and he would literally ask me the questions like, what's wrong with you? Like, what are your weaknesses? And I'd be like, well, like, I mean, I know that they're there, but like, I'm not living in sin and anything, and I'm
Is
not
he like trying to disqualify you or something?
He was trying to figure out what was wrong with me so he could feel secure.
Okay.
Because he was really connected to his own failures and like his own insecurities and his own weaknesses.
Inadequacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big one for men.
And I think he saw how secure I felt in myself. And I think that threatened him. And though he was really interested in me, I think he was trying to find a way to feel secure. And even in friendship with you, you were always constantly celebrating my strength and my power and like also harnessing it in different ways. And you were so secure in your masculinity and never had to shut me down. I could tell it didn't feel like a threat to you. And yeah, I don't know. It just was like there was safety that was there because of the amount of masculinity you had.
Yeah.
And I've loved that in our marriage. And I've heard so many of our friends observe that about us. It's like, you're both so strong, but you both make space for each other's strength. Like you can both handle each other really, really well, and you yield to each other really well too.
Well, I think true strength has meekness attached to it.
Yeah.
Because true strength doesn't need to go, I am strong.
Yeah.
True strength knows how to sit and wait until it's actually required for someone else's benefit.
Yeah. I mean, meekness is strength withheld. Mm-hmm. That's literally what it means.
Yeah, exactly. So that was Jesus.
It's pulling it back. It's not making yourself less than or thinking of yourself less than, which is what a lot of people think humility is.
It's vain humility.
Yeah. It's like,
I'm a worm.
No,
I'm just a worm.
I know my strength. I know my giftings. I know my power, and I don't feel the need to exert it or have dominance over you or anybody else.
Well, I think good-hearted men that grew up Christian in a lot of evangelical church or Baptist. I was Baptist. I grew up Baptist. I believed you have to hate yourself.
Yeah.
In order to be a good Christian. It's like, no, we're all worm. We're all worms. We're all scum. Jesus is great. Mm-hmm. And so if we could become nothing and he can live through me and I could just be a vessel that he could fill and wear me like a glove and just use me to do whatever are his ways, it totally dehumanizes us. Mm-hmm. And there's also so much belief that men, if we were truly fully ourselves in our masculinity, we would be dangerous and damaging to the people around us. That's why I say, men, take control over your impulses. It's like, there's just all of this like restraint.
Yeah. And it's not less of me, more of you, God. It's all of me and all of you, God.
Yeah.
Like God isn't looking for puppets. He doesn't want to be a puppet master. He wants to be united with us. He wants the fullness of who we are. But it's one thing that I have noticed about you. It's the reason why I'm married to you, is like, I remember witnessing your masculinity, and you had so much strength and so much power, but so much tenderness, so much humility, so much willingness to take ownership. And you weren't afraid of my strength, and you could actually lead me. Like even in friendship, you guys, if you've followed our podcast for a long time, have heard our dating story, and you have heard the ways that Spencer called me out in friendship. That was like, ooh, ouch. That felt really good. Like, oh, I can't believe you just said that to me. Good. But like, wow, the fact that you can see into me, the fact that you have more wisdom than me, the fact that you have history with God, the fact that you aren't a puppet, the fact that you are being really honest about your issues and your healing journey, and you're taking ownership over your life and your emotions, and you're bringing those things to God, and you're bringing those things to leadership, and you're willing to be led. Like this mixture of
thank you
power and strength, but humility and tenderness and awareness. Like it's a beautiful cocktail of all of the things that I wanted and needed, but didn't know I needed at the time until I married you, until once I finally started dating you, I was like, man, this is so right. And I remember over and over again, this is probably like a little bit of codependency mixed in, but I remember 3 weeks into dating when we knew we were in love, I had this phrase that run through my head, the safety of you, the safety of you. And it was the first time I had felt safe with someone. And that saturated me in the best way, where I was like, oh my gosh, I've never felt safe to be small, safe to be weak, safe to be myself, and like have someone there that's strong enough to hold space for me.
Yeah.
And So yeah, it's the thing that I have admired about you the most is how much you've fought to be healthy in your masculinity. And you haven't been healthy in our whole relationship. You've had really painful seasons.
And I'm happy to talk about some of that stuff, by the way.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great.
And you've had weaknesses that have really impacted our marriage. And so it's not that,
I'm perfect.
as you guys are listening to this, it's not that he is the perfect picture of the healthy masculine man that's never struggled and doesn't have weaknesses. It's that he's always on a journey to take ownership of his weaknesses. He's always on a journey to get his character healed by God and to be refined by God and to be led by people who have more wisdom and life experience than him. And that is truly what I think makes a healthily masculine man. It's not having arrived in these things. It's having enough humility to constantly be working on it.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear from you, like, what is healthy masculinity to you?
I think for me, I didn't know that just health was healthy masculinity. I think all I cared about was being connected to myself when I started getting help. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd say if I look at my my seasons of life, the way that I experienced life, the way I showed up in life before I started receiving like counseling and coaching and really doing some deep inner healing work, I'd say I had a lot of ministry experiences, you know, rich history with God, seeing him show up with crazy miraculous stories that just built such a good foundation of God is real.
Yeah.
And he is loving and kind and he is powerful and his kingdom is real. That foundation was so valuable. And also I was at war with myself. I was at war with myself in so many seasons too. So I'd be like, there's ministry Spencer. And then there's the Spencer that behind closed doors felt out of control to different impulses, pornography. What was another one?
Throwing up after meals,
bulimia. Since I was 18 years old, mm-hmm. I would religiously count, you know, grams of carbs, protein, fat. And if I ever had a cheat meal, I'd throw up afterwards. I learned that was a way you could expel, you know, calories and almost reset the standard again. But it was unhealthy. It had to carry, it was taxing. And also it just left me with shame of like, no other men I know deal with this. There's something inherently wrong with me. Yeah. And I think that was the lie that built over time is there's something inherently wrong with me. There's something uniquely wrong with me. And the more that gets hidden and more in the dark, it grows. And it's something Paul Young said is that secrets left in the dark grow claws. And that's just true. You shed light on something, it doesn't have anywhere to grow anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, you know, certain types of plants, you put it out in the sun and all of a sudden there are sun plants that they don't grow like that. And that's the type of weed that those things are in our lives. They need to have that light exposed to it for you to be healthy. But it's so terrifying because in shame, I believed that if I am exposed, other people will find out just how ugly I am and disgusting I am too. And I think that was a tormenting thought that kept me hidden. And if people find that out, they'll punish me by abandoning me and I'll be left alone, which was my worst nightmare. But except the whole time I was living alone, it's such a catch-22.
Living isolated.
Right.
Yeah, it's like that subconscious belief is that I'm disgusting, that there's something uniquely wrong with me. And then the fear is that someone else will validate that belief. Yeah. And then we'll be sure that it's true. Yeah. And that feels so scary. And so it's almost like I'm going to try to keep this at bay for as long as I can so that this thing that's inside of me never gets validated because I'm so afraid of it being confirmed that that's true about me. Yeah,
exactly. And so as I'm like building this very long definition of masculinity for you, healthy masculinity, I would say healthy masculinity for me was the result of waging war against shame. Mm-hmm. Shame in my life manifested as people pleasing. So believing other people are fragile. Shame in my life manifested as like this self-deprecating ministry, Spencer, where I wasn't allowed to have needs or wants. It's just whatever the Lord wants. And except he doesn't call us slaves. He calls us friend. And I believe when you are in a place of submission, if you are led by shame, you can't hear him say things to you in a friend relationship. You can only hear him as a slave. And I think that's why when the Israelites were led out of Egypt into the promised land, they were addicted to a slave relationship.
Yeah.
And so they almost wanted to go back to Egypt. We had these types of meals, like we could expect to live this way. And he's like, the wilderness was almost necessary to get that slavery out of them so they could be prepared to actually have the promised land. And I think for me, there was that stripping process of ripping out that slavery I knew my whole life, that God wanted me to learn how to own myself, even in my worst. And so it took being led, it took receiving mentorship, counseling, coaching, unpacking the wounds I think that were left there from my father, my mother. Even though they were very loving, very kind, they were doing the best they knew how, we can only give away what we know. And I would say a very sad thing that I feel about my father is that he didn't receive the love that he required from his mom and dad. And I remember, having these conversations, even on this podcast with him. His mom never said, "I love you." There was a huge disconnect in my father's heart with knowing how to connect with a young child. And even in a podcast episode with him, he said, "I remember being with you in a hotel room when you were young." And I was like, "What do I do with this kid?" And he didn't know how to connect with me. Yeah. There are so many moments that I can trace back to not feeling like I was allowed to be me. And so I almost learned to just imitate everybody else around me that got the love that I wanted. Mm-hmm. And so I learned to really get good at putting on a mask my whole life. And I see so many men that I've coached, that I've had as friends, and we feel addicted to our masks. That mask could be the self-made man. I built this business. I was this amazing athlete. I am this incredible ministry person. Whatever the mask is, we have this performer in us that's working so hard for love, and it's all attributed to our performance. And I think we have to learn to let go of that and actually partner with a self-love that models after the intense love that the Father has for us. Mm-hmm. So it's this thing that needs to be cultivated in us. And I think when you met me, I was at this point where I was like, I love me. I really do. I love me. And if other people don't, I'm okay with them walking away. Mm. And that's a powerful thing to feel in somebody else next to you. You're like, oh, you really love yourself. Mm-hmm. I think to some people it feels like arrogance, but that's not that kind of confidence. It's a different type of confidence. It's a tender confidence.
Yeah, I remember being around you in that season and just feeling we were so healthy in our friendship. Like we never crossed boundaries. We never had weird stuff. Like I was never like trying to flirt with you or trying to be wanted by you or trying to get emotional needs met by you. I think I can say the same for you. Like we had really healthy boundaries in the way we did relationship. But I had this feeling every time of like, man, I just love being with you. It just feels so easy and so life-giving, and we'd have good conversations and we would laugh, and it was rich and it was fun and there was depth and there was so much health in it. But I think I felt your inner world of like, man, you are facing yourself, and because of it you feel alive and you feel connected to yourself, and you feel you were in a season where you were still struggling feeling connected to God.
Yeah, I remember that.
But that was at the beginning of I was
pretty honest about it.
No, you were very honest about it. I'd say you actually struggled feeling really connected to God until the last couple of years, really.
Yeah, I think there were just a few traumatic events that happened in my life that really caused me to not know how to connect with him.
Right.
Yeah.
But even with that, like I'd say me feeling connected to God is the thing that makes me feel the most alive in my life. And even though you didn't have that in that season, like you were struggling and had pain and you were processing through a lot of stuff, but you still felt so full and so alive and had such a strong sense of self. And that was the atmosphere I was always feeling. And I just remember always wanting to spend more time with you because I felt that energy happening inside of you.
Well, I think it's rare to experience somebody that has a Christian background, has had a faith in Christ, that has gone through seasons of questioning or feeling totally unknown or lack of conviction, and experiencing those people being okay with it. being okay with themselves having questions.
Yeah.
And that was something that tore me apart. I'm like, I must be terrible that I've seen these crazy miracles that God has done, and I'm questioning my entire relationship with him. And I learned that that's actually the voice of shame and accusation. Like, if God's not scared of my questions, if God's not scared of my wondering, if God's not scared of my lack of conviction and faith, why would I be scared of that same thing over me? And that was a new case I was building for how Jesus was. Like, he met with those people. He pursued those people. He went after the sinners. He went after the hungry. He went after the tax collectors. He went after the people asking questions that didn't have the answers. And he actually rejected the people that believed they had all the answers. And so I started believing, oh, I'm actually in a better position being authentic with where I'm at than acting like I have everything together and I don't.
Yeah.
And so I think that started to build a resilience in me of, oh, I'm okay not being okay.
Yeah.
I'm learning to love myself in the not okay. And I know a lot of men that they hate themselves in the not okay so that they can grab control, because they believe a healthy man has control over everything in their lives. So the second they're out of control, they're like, oh, screw me. I suck. I'm the worst, until they get back to it.
Yeah.
I'm back in control again. I can love myself again. And that's very sad. And I remember those seasons of my life too. Okay, so real quick, just wanted to take a quick second to say that if you're tired of feeling stuck in sadness, disconnect, or feeling powerless to relationship triggers,
Maybe you just feel swirly internally and you don't fully feel powerful to work through your emotions, and you really want to be more connected to yourself and to God, we really encourage you to click the link below the description.
yeah, so we have like a full hub of all the courses we've ever created for emotional health, spiritual health. The best thing you could ever do if you have a vision for your life of who you want to be is to get help or mentorship from people that are ahead of you in some specific area. And that's in order to become the person that the loved ones in your life deserve.
In this hub called the Alive and Free Collective, we have a monthly coaching call with us, a monthly teaching and Q&A with trusted experts we love, and we have a community of believers on an emotional health journey. And like we said, all the emotional health courses we've offered, and a vault of over 50 trainings from the top emotional health leaders giving their best guidance.
It's only $47 a month, and you can learn all about that if you click the link below. And if you want to learn how to be a safe leader and coach others and start a life coaching business, you can click the link below as well in the description to learn about our program, Coach Launch. Okay, back to everything that's important. I'm curious for you, what were things in men, because you were around some pretty, like, fairly healthy men, had good relationships with God, handsome, good-looking, attractive men that even had asked you out multiple times. What were things that made it feel like repulsive to you, I guess, being around different types of men that didn't feel like, oh, I want to go down this road? I guess maybe both, like maybe those attractive things, but also like ultimately what led you to not continue feeling attracted.
I think the biggest thing is the men who would talk the talk and wouldn't walk the walk. Like the men who acted like they were healthy, the men that acted like they were really pursuing Jesus, or acted like said all of the words of like, even I want to pursue you and I'm doing X, Y, and Z, but then there was no follow through. I feel like that is a huge character breach for me as a woman, feeling like I could never be with you. You know, for men who say one thing but do another.
What would be like an example of that?
I mean, a big no-brainer one is this guy that I had started dating right before I met you. And he basically told me that he wanted to be with me, and that because of the way that like the school internship was working, that he needed to wait until he was out of the internship and until I was done with my first year of ministry school. And so he basically said, like, let's get to know each other. Let's just like build friendship. And then at the end of the year, let's be together. Nothing was communicated over the course of those 9 months telling me that anything had changed. And so I was very intentionally like waiting, praying, preparing my heart to be with this guy at the end of the year. That was like the first year of our friendship, was like me waiting and like really trying to take care of my heart and like prepare myself to enter into a relationship. And I thought it was going to be a serious relationship. Come to find out at the end of that 9 months, after I had to initiate the conversation, that guy basically owned, I had no intention of being with you. I'm sorry. I don't have a backbone. And basically took ownership for the fact that he said one thing and didn't mean it.
You think he was just scared of like hurting you or something, or scared of being seen as a person that hurts women, or
I don't know.
Like,
I don't know him enough to know what his intention or motive was,
yeah,
you know,
some sort of protector there.
but I think, I mean, that's a big example. There were a lot of small examples with guys that I was even just friends with that I wouldn't even consider dating, because I watched the character faults that would happen. And I think more than anything, having a man who's man enough to initiate conversations and be honest and vulnerable about where he's at, and honor and protect his heart and the heart of the women that are involved. I feel like that's a really important thing. And that's something that that I had never witnessed a man do until I was with you, where you were so clear about boundaries. You were so clear about expectations in relationship. You would clearly communicate when you had feelings for me. The times that I rejected you, you'd clearly communicate, okay, I might take a little bit of space. I might need to readjust in our relationship. But anything I do from here on out, just know it's not me trying to like woo you or pursue you to win you. It's me just loving you as a friend.
Yeah.
Like you would just so clearly communicate where you were at all of the time. And it created so much security for me in relationship, because I was so used to men who would flirt with me and be like, let's hang out, and then never follow through.
Yeah.
You know, or say that they had feelings for me, but never initiate an honest conversation when they needed to have different boundaries if they weren't interested anymore.
Yeah.
You know, or if something had changed.
I think it's a big fear of rejection. You know, I remember feeling that, like, if I can get a girl to flirt with me, then, and I can see, are there signs that she likes me? Then it feels easier to ask that girl out, or like present an opportunity to like take things further. Cause I'm like, oh no, she's vibing, you know, I can tell she's vibing. So let me create that vibe and experience first. And I see that a lot of men, that's why a lot of men are good at like the like witty banter thing. But then they don't have the follow through. You're like, oh, you're incredible, but don't have the follow throughs, because no, they've learned behaviors that are protecting them from rejection. Yeah. So my whole thing was like, I'm going to go after what I want, and I am not going to be scared of like rejection. You know, I am okay saying, hey, do you want to go out? I think you're beautiful. I'm whatever, you know, and I would say that to a woman in that season. And if they're like, oh, I'm not interested, I'm like, okay, no worries. You know, it's like, it didn't hurt me anymore. I was like, I like me.
But you had tools to work through rejection.
Yes. So this, and that's in a counseling office, in a coaching office, I should say, with Justin Stumval. He really helped me learn how to love the parts of myself that I had rejected. Yeah. You know, I'd rejected Spencer, that was a Bible thumper in a season. I'd rejected Spencer that struggled with bulimia and self-hatred. I'd rejected Spencer that decided to party a bunch because I was really into the attention of women. I rejected the current Spencer that still struggled with bulimia, random bouts of pornography addiction, you know, just different parts of me, like the people pleaser version of me that, you know, didn't know how to stay with a woman, would feel repulsed after 3 months of dating. And I learned to love those parts of me. And it's like, whoa, wait, you can't do that. I learned that was so taboo. You know, as a Christian, you go, yeah, love everybody. But then we hate ourselves in our worst. And then we think Jesus is doing the same thing. Yeah, just like hate the sin, but love the sinner. Except we end up hating the sinner because we see them as their sin. And I saw myself as my sin. I saw myself as my failures. And I had to learn, no, I was doing the best I knew how. Like at my core, the best I knew how in my subconscious. Yeah. I was doing the best I knew how, and I fell short. And I had to learn to go, oh, I'm going to love myself the way that Jesus does in those places. He draws near to the brokenhearted. And the more that I can see myself as a brokenhearted boy, man, trying to do the best I knew how, I could build a case for compassion.
So what, like, get granular. Like, what does that look like when you see like the Spencer who was throwing up after meals when he was 18 years old and like partying, trying to get girls' attention, and you feel that like self-judgment and that fear of rejection, what does that practically look like for you to get to the root of loving and bringing compassion to yourself?
Early on in that season, I was in some of the worst behaviors. And the reason I went to coaching was because I was getting drunk 5 days out of the week at the bars. You know, I was going out with crazy. Well, I wasn't at that point. I wasn't really going out with girls. I was locked in my own shame. It was like I would end up in those random relationships where it just like convenienced into, oh, I was in a car with a girl, but I never really asked her out or anything. It was just like we happened to be drinking and, you know, got together. I
got together doesn't mean he was having sex with him, just to clarify.
Yeah, thanks for that. I had a ton of offense towards God at that point. I felt very numb, and I was looking at porn all the time. There's just a lot of stuff going on. And I think in that season, it looked like, oh, how can I love myself now? Mm-hmm. And so, you know, the challenge for me from my coach, from the Lord even, was how can unconditional love be my teacher in this season, and no longer the shame that I've befriended so deeply, the self-hatred that I'd used and wielded as a whip against myself to get myself into shape and have better behaviors. What if I let go of behaviorism altogether and saw my heart as the most valuable thing to the Lord and to myself? And I decided, no, I'm actually a little boy that's in deep need of a father and love. And I no longer saw myself as my mistakes and failures and protectors. And so in the moment where I'd eat a meal and throw up afterwards, I would throw up. I would like get myself off the toilet, and I'd go to wash myself off, and I'd look in the mirror, and I'm like, I've hated you. I've hated you for too long. And I'm not going to judge you right now. I'm not going to tell you you're disgusting for having thrown up in the toilet. And I'm so sorry that my go-to is to tell you you're disgusting, Spencer. And I'm so sorry. And I'd ask myself for forgiveness. Like I would take ownership for my own agreement with the accuser. You know, I look at porn and I would, in that moment afterwards, not even during, not even before, and I didn't have enough control over my impulse. It was just like, oh, I'm so sorry, Spencer, you felt the need to go there. You feel how dissatisfying that was. That's punishment in itself. I know you don't want those things in your heart of hearts. And I'm so sorry that I've shamed you in moments like this. And I've told you you're disgusting. That I've created space from you. I told you you can't approach God anymore. Unconditional love, would you be my teacher in this moment? Would you come show me how you see me in this moment, that I'm not deserving of punishment? And I would wait and I would listen. And it was after the fact every time. And a lot of people are like, oh, you just kept sinning. It's like, yeah, sorry. That's what happened. And guess what? A few months of that, I remember one day I noticed I'm actually not throwing up after meals as much. That's interesting. And then one day I opened up my laptop to look at porn. And in that moment, I just had this moment of presence where I closed it. And I was like, I don't want that. That's disgusting. And I was like, I like almost caught myself doing that. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. I don't want that. Nobody is hovering over my shoulder. Mm. There's no shame leading me there. There's no need to behave that way. My heart just doesn't want this. And it stopped. It just stopped after that season. Yeah. Until like years later, I got like big triggers that came up in our marriage, and we can talk about that. Yeah. But it was such a unique thing. I'd never experienced other people, other men, or other people at the pulpit that had talked about like love can actually help free you. Yeah. Now, I never let love tell me that behaviors were okay. Yeah. I never let love do that. And that's not unconditional love. Unconditional love isn't like your behaviors are okay. Yeah. It still sees like that behavior is hurting you and it's not for your best, but I'm not going to see you as your behavior. And I'm also not going to diminish your value or your worthiness of love because of the behavior. Mm-hmm. Your worthiness of love is dictated by the person of love. And he decides you're lovable, not you and your weird standard that you've gotten from religion or somewhere else. Yeah. And I think I needed to get free from that. right? It was an Old Testament theology about God that Jesus came to actually help save us from, is our own view of God. And I didn't know what that looked like practically until that season. So I'd say practically it looks like facing yourself in the midst of your worst.
Yeah.
And actually being okay with the fact that I am a little boy in different areas. I'm not a man in different areas, but with a compassionate and empathetic and loving lens instead of a disqualifying and judgmental lens, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I remember being introduced to this concept of unconditional love by you and feeling like, no way am I going to bring unconditional love in a moment whenever I did something bad or something that I don't like or a behavior that I'm trying to get rid of, because I believed it would condone that behavior and reinforce it and then almost amplify it in my life. Like, oh, if I do that and give myself permission to do that, now I'm going to just do that every single day.
Right.
And I didn't understand that it actually disempowers sin.
Yeah.
Like, you no longer need to go to that thing as a medication anymore, because now you're no longer having to medicate, because now you're connected to your heart and getting that need met at the core. Ultimately, we have this emotional need, and if we don't get it met from God or people in our life in a healthy way, then we will find a way to get that need met in an unhealthy way. Like, the need will get met.
You're gonna
one way or another.
You're gonna drink water, whether it's dirty or clean.
Yes.
When thirst hits you.
Yes. Yeah. But we so are convinced somehow. I think it's behaviorism. Like, we're so convinced, probably from the way that we were parented growing up and the way we learned things in the church and through religion, that if I do this thing and I'm met with love in the middle of it, that it will reinforce sin in my life almost. Yep. So we're like, great, I'm going to shame it out of me.
Yes.
I'm going to shame myself to get the proper result, because then I can be lovable.
Yep.
Then I can get my needs met. Then I can be worthy of God. And it's actually like, no, the cross already did that. But now if you can come into agreement and alignment with that love for yourself, now it actually takes away the power of sin.
Yeah.
And you're getting that need met at your core. And now you're no longer needing to medicate in that way.
Yeah. And as a side note, I just want to say this for any men listening, or like any women who are either married or have a boyfriend that have been looking for help. I have felt from the Lord recently to start helping men. And so whether there's a link in the description of this podcast or there's an email, I'm going to post one of those two options that you can have that person reach out, or you can reach out if you're a man for help. I'm putting together some different resources for men. So if you do want that, click that link or that email.
One disclaimer I want to add to some of Spencer's journey was that journey was when he was single.
Yes. And
when those same issues came up in our marriage, his approach was different.
Yes.
Because we have a big value to not let pornography in our marriage.
Yes.
And so when that was a big issue for him, his approach was very different because it impacted me significantly.
Yeah. You might be able to use that approach, but you might not be married anymore at the other side of it.
Yeah. Unless your wife is not triggered by that, unless it hasn't been a big issue, then it might be a different journey for some of you listening to this. But that was definitely not the case for me. Yeah. It wasn't like, you just go figure it out and get healing. It was like, no, you better not bring pornography into this home ever. Yeah.
Well, Alice Miller, John Bradshaw, Patrick Carnes, great sources on getting free from addiction. Mm-hmm. And pretty much all of those sources, Patrick Carnes is incredible. John Bradshaw, incredible. Alice Miller is like big inner healing stuff, inner child healing. But what they will all say is to end your addiction first. Go cold turkey, mm-hmm. and then jump into the 12 steps in a sense, but also doing some of this inner healing deep work. It can upset and it can re-trigger things in behaviors, but that's why you want to have some sobriety under your belt too. And so I would say if I were to do it all over again, I don't think at that time I would have just been like, okay, I'm going to be free and do it. I think I would have pulled in sources of accountability for the behavior itself that I knew would be loving and kind and not shaming, but also just be a source of accountability, knowing like, hey, it's good to have a conversation anytime you're desiring to do that, So I would say if you are a married man, especially, the first thing you should do is have accountability over the behavior.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the more damaging and destructive the behavior is to someone or other people, the more boundaries need to be put in place, right? So take, to go extreme, you know, a pedophile. We need to put them in prison first before we start working on their inner healing journey.
Yeah.
You need to be away from other children to where you can no longer harm them anymore at all. And then we will help you in that context that is safe from you damaging other people.
Yeah.
So that's an extreme example. So, but you can't tell that person like, hey, just love yourself in the midst of getting free from this behavior. So I would say like protect yourself from the damaging effects of that behavior and then work on yourself, but don't do it from a shaming place.
And one little practical thing I'll throw in there is like Covenant Eyes is a great source of accountability.
I still use it.
I still get a report. I don't have to check it. Well, I mean, sometimes I get like red notifications and
when
it's
you
like,
were looking up
wait,
swimsuits.
no, that wasn't even what came up.
Oh, yeah.
I get red alerts saying you have to monitor Spencer's activity, and it will literally be a screenshot of me on a Zoom call in like a pink tube top, and it thinks that I'm naked, I guess. It's really sensitive.
Their standards are up there.
Anyways, but we still have Covenant Eyes, and that's a great resource. Like Spencer has a few different accountability like sources that it will alert them if there's anything that he's gone on his phone, his laptop, or his MacBook.
And
his MacBook and his iPad.
And I talk to men
notifications
every week.
Yeah.
I talk to men every week. You know, it's like, it doesn't have to get to those outer boundaries for me to have accountability now. It's like, now the accountability is like, how am I doing?
Yeah.
And there's like a way deeper source of that. And I think that's what you find is like, at first you spiral out here as maybe your spiral starts getting closer and closer.
Yeah.
And it's like the spirals are less and less, but still that it's learning to break free from the shame that you've used as a tool to try and benefit you.
Yeah.
It's not a friend anymore.
And you really don't want, like, I feel like it is way too prevalent out there to just have accountability. To have a guy that you confess to every single time you do it, or to have something that you install on your computer. It's like, you don't want just the Band-Aid, you guys. It's not going to work.
You'll find ways to rip off the Band-Aid. Yeah.
I hope it works for you if that's what you're doing right now. But in my opinion, it's not enough.
It's not enough.
Like, there is so much deep pain and dissociation that's happening, and it's probably been deeply ingrained from your childhood or adolescence.
Yeah.
That you need to learn how to process through that pain that led you to needing to go to pornography or whatever the thing is, whether it's alcohol or drugs or pornography, or there's a lot of lesser degree things that we dissociate with too.
Let me bring up another example. John Bradshaw. So he gave up drinking cold turkey because he'd get hammered. He was like a strong alcoholic. John Bradshaw, who wrote a lot of books I love, you know, Healing the Shame That Binds You, Homecoming, Bradshaw and the Family, did a PBS publication. There's big stuff he's done. He's now since died, but his stuff is so healing. If you ever get your hands on it, it's amazing. But John Bradshaw, he said, I quit alcohol cold turkey. He said that didn't mean that it solved the problem though. He said it actually showed up in my life as behavior addiction. So he became a workaholic. So he was free from alcohol, he said, but then it manifested in workaholism. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if you shut it down, it's still not going to solve the problem because
it's like whack-a-mole.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it. So no matter what, it's like stop, yes, but work on all those underlying things. Yeah. That's where your heart's going to be set free and not feeling like I'm still desperate for a water source and I'm still going to settle on something that's less than.
Yeah. I'm curious. There are a lot of big names out there, you'll know them better than I am, where they talk about being a masculine man. And you see all of this like pendulum swinging. And
like Andrew Tate's.
Yes.
And
it is all about being manly.
Macho.
This macho man. And talk to me about it. Like, I don't even have any of the language for it. I just see it and I'm like, oh God, no.
Well, it's really appealing. It's really appealing because men have been so shamed by a lot of culture. There are so many women that have publicly made men the enemy.
Yeah.
And we learn like we're just bad. Mm-hmm. We're impulsive. And if you're a man, you are impulsive. You are You have toxic masculinity. You take advantage of women. All you see in a woman is butt and boobs and like a piece of meat. It's just like there are these word curses have been spoken over men over and over and over again by our culture and society. And then we're taught that by church. A lot of churches, evangelical church, you're bad. You need accountability because you're bad. Just starve the wolf. And it's like, they have this whole thing that I learned where it's like, if you just starve the wolf in your life that wants to eat, then it'll grow hungry and it'll just like fade away. And it's like, that's my lust. Okay, I'll just starve it and I'll go
Starve
away.
the wolf
Stop
so the
feeding
wolf
it. Yeah,
leaves.
exactly. And you're like, okay, so what am I left with? This Christianity of boring Bible reading and that's it? That's not the life of Jesus, the life he had for us. But we're not taught that these are strengths, that our masculinity, our courage is a good thing. We're not taught that emotions are great. We're not taught that our impulses were there for a reason. We're not taught that the like dangerous part of ourselves is meant to be protective. And we're not taught that we're meant to have a voice and be honest, and that we're taught to treat everybody else as they're fragile.
Yeah.
And so you should tiptoe in your masculinity. Yeah. And so when we see an Andrew Tate, there's this guy that is actually the most Googled name, I think, right now.
What?
He's like, I think last time I checked, he's like the most Googled name. Is Andrew Tate.
Lord.
This guy is making probably over 100 million a year just off of his courses for young men. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 year olds are getting his courses. And here you have this mixed martial arts guy. He smokes cigars and drinks whiskey on pretty much everything he does. He talks like very straight at you. He's very well articulated, but he's kind of just said go F women, and it's just like he has these like different things, the alpha male, and he says some good things too, to be honest. Like I've heard him say some things. I'm like, there's good and there's negative stuff mixed in. He's changed his opinion on stuff. So I'm not going to even demonize Andrew Tate, but there's like this pendulum swing he's offering to men that have been so taught that they're bad and that they should own shame over their identity as a man. And he's saying, no, rise up, be a man. It's okay you have desires for women. It's okay you want to build big things in your life. Work hard. There's like all this good messaging in there, but it's like, I like nobody gave me what I have in my life. I came from nothing and built this. You can do it too. And I think a lot of men are wanting to know I have what it takes. And so he's a symbol of you have what it takes.
He's a symbol of fathering.
He's a symbol of fathering.
Sadly.
And like, just like Paul said, you have so many teachers, you don't have many fathers. It's still such a problem in our society. We see all these different places of poverty, and we're like, why is this area, why is everybody that's ever lived there still in poverty? And it's because there's a huge problem of fatherlessness in those areas. And I think men are starving for that. They're starving to be bestowed masculinity. Masculinity can't be learned. It has to be bestowed. We need to be told, I'm a man. There used to be so many different moments where men would go through a coming of age experience where they would go through this experience with men at age 13, 14, where then, it was like this moment of courage, or they have to overcome something, or they're in the wilderness and they have to fight for survival, and different tribes put, men through something where it's like, oh, you are a man now. And the men around them would say, you are a man.
As for you, what is one non-negotiable thing that you feel like helps facilitate healthy masculinity in your life?
Man, I would say like to make it as simple as possible. And this might sound like a plug to somebody that is deciding to coach men. But I don't mean it that way. I just mean it as like something that I personally have. I talk to a mentor, spiritual father, and someone that was a coach to me for years, every single week. So every single week I talk to two men that are like fathers over me that I've submitted my life to. If they told me, don't do this, I would listen to them. If they I share everything with them. And then I have other men around me, but I think having, and I hear a lot of men, they're like, I wish I had a mentor like that. I wish I had a spiritual leader. I wish I had that. And I'm like, I had to pay for it for years when I didn't have money. I remember when I was making like $1,800 a month at a sales job, I could not make money. And I talked my boss into paying for half of my sessions with a coach. And I covered the other half. And so I was spending $300 out of my own paycheck, and my boss was spending $300 on coaching every week. For years, I did that. But then what's crazy is the implications of that investment was not just in my own personal health, but I made more money because I grew in confidence. I grew in self-esteem. How many men do you know that turn down jobs, that turn down opportunities, that don't step into their greatest financial or economic gift on the planet because they don't believe in themselves? And I think that's something that I've learned to invest in. We've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in entrepreneurial leadership, but also in our own coaching, like counseling that we've received, therapy we've received, which is why I think we've experienced health in all these different areas, is we've gotten help. And we haven't let ourselves become powerless to our situations, financial situations. Yeah. So I think that's a non-negotiable. I'm always going to have leadership. The seasons where I've even believed the lie I can't afford leadership were my most down seasons. Yeah. I'm like, I need leadership. I need to find it, whether it's free or not. I just need to have somebody that has some capacity of leadership in my life. You know, I'd say that's a big one. Yeah. So good. I think it's too why I want to create a resource for men that don't have that. I am creating some more expensive options, but an affordable option too for men. Because I do believe that there's a lot of need that's going unmet for men. Yeah. If I feel it, even where I'm at, the journey I've had, I can't imagine what other men are feeling. Yeah. Yeah. Last thing I will say, it's like super practical and tiny. Men need to have a working outlet. It's like you need to have an expression of testosterone release. Like when I get in the gym and I'm like throwing around big weights, it's so healthy for me, and it's kept me safe and healthy. I think too, just mentally, I need to have that expression of like letting out some of that like pent up emotion. I don't even know where it's stored up in my body, but it's like gets released. I feel like so domicile after a lot of workouts where I'm just like, oh, I feel good.
Domicile, is domicile a word?
I believe it is. Yeah.
Not docile?
Docile.
Oh, I was like.
Domicile.
I was like, what is domicile? Dominant.
What does the word domicile mean? The country. Okay, I already know I'm wrong.
Docile. Okay.
We should keep all that in
I
there.
don't want to say docile. Can I take that away? Can I say you're regulated in your nervous system?
Thanks for saying that. Yeah. I would say like in a healthy sense, I don't feel like out of control to like those after a strong day of work where I'm just sitting at a computer at a desk. I need to have a big expression of something. Guys that have construction, jobs, they probably need to worry about that. I do, so that's a big one that's brought me health. That's a non-negotiable.
I love that you're so domicile.
Domicile.
It's my favorite thing about you.
I'm going to name this men's program Domicile Dudes.
Oh my gosh.
DD.
Okay. My next question. You are a boy dad.
Yeah.
And you've said it yourself, so is your dad, that you didn't get what you needed from a dad growing up.
Sure.
To where you would even know what healthy masculinity was from your dad. That is, you've had to fight for it outside of your dad to get that need met. Yep. But because you didn't get that met in childhood, what do you feel like it looks like for you to show up for Wilder and introduce some of that into his life? What does that look like?
I think it is becoming a guardrail that pushes me deeper into being there for my own heart in this season, knowing that there's already been a few moments I've had to correct with him, right? Like that moment the other day where he starts, dumping out this big bag of chips on the floor. And I was like, Wilder, stop doing that. And then he did it again. I was like, Wilder, don't. And then he dumps the whole thing on the ground. I was like, Wilder, put it down. I just asked you not to do that. And he's 2, right? He's 2. And I come over And I was like, well, now we got to clean this up. And I'm like, see, you dumped these all over the ground, and now dad and mom have to clean this up. Does this go on the floor right here? And I'm just trying to like pound in this lesson to him. And in my head, I'm thinking he needs to know because he didn't listen to me. He needs to know this, how important it is to listen to me. And I'm thinking about all the other things, like if I tell him not to go in the street and he just doesn't listen to me and goes in the street, that's dangerous. It's just, I'm rationalizing this big emotion that I had in this moment where I felt out of control because of what he was doing. And really, I was thinking in that moment too, we have to get out of the house and go on our walk. We have such limited time to spend time as a family. You and I don't have much time to walk. We need to go take care of something, go do that. And so we have limited time. And now we have to take care of this. It's a mess. And he was so unregulated after that. He was having meltdowns. He was freaking out.
It was like 5 meltdowns in 10 minutes.
In 10
and before
minutes, yeah.
He was so happy for like 2 hours.
And I remember we went to go take a shower just after that and rinse off. And we're going to do like our evening, walk or something. And you were like, did you apologize to him? And I was like, I didn't, but like, I think I would have done it the same if I were to do it all over again. And I had this moment where I was like, why would I do it the same? Oh, I think what I wanted to do was more important. And also I'm holding him to a way higher standard of impulse control than he has.
Yeah.
And to him, he just was trying to learn cause and effect. And me showing up that way didn't help him feel like he had a safe environment to even learn the lesson. And it dysregulated his whole nervous system. He was in fight or flight after that. Yeah. So I put him in his little amygdala. And honestly, kids at that age, that's their big amygdala. It's like their frontal lobe is so small. It's
not developed.
Right. So they're not thinking the way that we do with rational thought. And so I expected too much of him as a 2-year-old. So I just stooped down to his level, got on my knee, and I looked at him in the eyes. I was like, Wilder, come here. And I was like, did you get, and he was still kind of fussy. I was like, did that make you scared? Did I scare you when I raised my voice and yelled because you put the chips on the floor? He goes, yeah, Dada, scary Dada. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Would you forgive me for yelling at you and treating you that way? And he was like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was like, can I give you a hug? Gives me a big hug. I was like, can I have a kiss? Gives me a big kiss. I was like, I'm so sorry. I lift him up and I like shake him around and then completely regulated from that point forward the whole rest of the night, right? So I'd say for me, I'm having to become more tender immediately in the moments following me doing something that dysregulated him or that wasn't super loving. I've seen other parents that just let their kids do whatever they want. So I have some there's some reaction in me to being a father like that. Like I want my kids to know boundaries and limits and healthy doubt. I don't want you to feel like you can confidently jump off a rooftop. Yeah. Like healthy doubt. I want you to know that. But I don't want you to carry the shame that goes with doubt that would make you feel like you are bad because of the things you do.
Yeah, or like what I do matters more than who I am.
Yeah, but that sent me into a journey right afterwards. I was like, oh, wait, when did I feel my parents' big reactions to small things in my life? And it helped me to go, okay, I need to actually face the areas where I didn't get the compassion and love I needed to be able to mature in proper progression. Yeah. Where it was forced upon me in moments I didn't know how to get it, or like I was confused, or I was young. And so I'd say in this season, I'm having to be more intentional with self-compassion and empathy and inviting God in to father me instead of trying to father from a place of deficit. It's causing me to go like, okay, yes, I want to get the moments right, but I don't want to just be a dutiful father that does the right behaviors out of duty. I want to be a father that is fathered and that's giving away something I'm receiving in the season at the same time that I'm also addressing some of those behaviors moment by moment. Yeah. So that's a big one for me.
I love that. You guys are growing up together.
Yeah. So I know, sweet. It's special. And I feel so much joy and enjoyment around him. You know, just getting to spend time with him, seeing him develop and seeing the crazy, you know, like I'm enjoying the like, oh, you're so crazy and it's awesome. But it kind of makes me go like, I can enjoy that about myself more. Like some of those like impulsive, crazy things, like not all impulse is bad.
Yeah.
Like it even says, and this is one thing I just want to say out of scripture, Romans 8, I think it's verse 14 says, the mature children of God live by the impulses of the Spirit. And we've been trained our whole lives, impulse is bad, but actually, you know, Paul is saying a mature Christian, a mature son or daughter lives by the impulses of the Spirit. And that's something that I want. And to be Spirit led, you have to be childlike. And so seeing that part of him, it is restorative to me, going like, I want to honor that.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Fun stuff. Well, I hope this was fun, I guess, listening for some of you women of like, oh, this is maybe a journey I haven't heard of that's available for men. Or maybe you're like, no, actually, this sounds like somebody that I know and respect has gone through this. And that's so cool that there's so many parallels. Maybe you're a man and you've gone through a similar journey and there's some validation in that. Or maybe it was just like one of those, moments where you're like, oh yeah, I get to remember some of the things that have anchored me in my masculinity and my journey. But maybe if you're a man that you really feel like you need help, you know, I really encourage you to pray about getting help, whether it's with me or somebody else. It's really important to have that in your life. And especially at the times you feel like you can't afford it, it's still that much more important to have it, because our life is so limited on time and you can't wait and let your life pass you by and not make these intentional decisions in your life to be the person you know you're called to be. So I would just say, like, get some sort of help if you're experiencing any of those deficits that I'd mentioned during the podcast. But I thought it was fun getting to have a conversation about this and reminisce a little bit.
Me too.
But we love you guys. We'll see y'all in the next episode.
See you.
Bye.